Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you as usual every morning, baby. Last night, 1-1, not the best, not what I wanted. Probably should have been 2-0, to be honest. Uh, Maybe arguably it should have been 1-1 in the complete other direction because you could argue maybe I got lucky on the Miami Heat. I don't know. I mean, the Miami Heat had to make a huge comeback. They were losing by double digits in the third quarter. I think they were down 10. They made a nice late comeback and got that outright win in a very low scoring, ugly game for a basketball game, for an NBA game. I'll take the win. And then it looked like I was going to easily go 2-0 with the Sacramento Kings. They had a 10-point lead. They had more than that. They were up like 15, 17, maybe even more than that in the third quarter. And they were still up 10 with like 2.5 minutes left. I'm like, this game is in the bag. No, not only do they wind up not covering, they wind up not even winning outright. It's insane. I don't know what happened in the final moments of that game. I know there was like a 4-point play right at the end to get the win for who were they playing against? I don't even remember who they were playing against. Whatever it was brutal, man. It was let me see. It was against Detroit. Yeah, that's right. Man, whatever. We'll move on to today. We have 5 college bowl games. I am going to play one of them this time, the late one. We have NBA and we have NHL returning. Let's talk about it, man, because a slight loss yesterday. It looks like I'm probably not going to wind up for the year here, although 5 days left, basically. It is still possible, I think. So I'm trying to be selective still. Let's try to get this going on, man. Let's try to get this done. College basketball technically is being played today, but we got a ranked Baylor team against a non-Division I team, Arlington Baptist, and then Duquesne is playing against another non-Division I team, Cleary University, which I don't even think there were betting odds out on those games. Maybe some really degenerate books have them. If you're super degenerate, you can go bet those games. Obviously, I will not be doing that. The NHL slate, I don't have anything on this as far as plays go, but I do think this is an interesting slate here for the NHL. So NHL is coming out of the holiday break, and really what you want to start looking for is you want to fade teams that went into the break hot, because that break can be like a momentum stopper. It's basically the same thing that I say about like NFL bye weeks. If you're on a win streak, you don't want to have time off, man. You want to keep playing. Like, you want to have normal time off. You don't want to have an extended period of time off. But if everything is going to hell for you and nothing is working, then that time off can actually help you fix some things. So that's the way I look at this. So I do have leans in a lot of these games, but I haven't played any of them. Chicago Blackhawks, yeah, they went into the break not on a good note. They lost a couple games in a row, even though one of them was a pretty tough game, Minnesota, and they only lost by 1. So that's a pretty difficult game there. But still, they went into the break on some losses. And now they're going, I assume they went home, and now they're going back out on the road for a single road game. They do have Dallas up next, which is a bigger game. But when you go into the break on a losing streak, I think you're going to show up in the next game. Buffalo in their last game, if you recall, won for me. I jumped in front of the Buffalo losing streak train, and I got the win on Buffalo, even though I did play them in the last 2 games here, and I lost one, but I won the one against the Islanders. I said it would be fitting if it was the Islanders who were the ones that helped Buffalo break their ridiculous loss streak, and they were. And it was, not only was it a win for Buffalo, it was a 7-1 win. So I could see that going both ways, right? Like, I mean, like, you go into the break on a big win, that win, you know, you could like lose that winning momentum that you just established. But was it really momentum when you only won 1 game? So maybe you could also see it as they broke that huge loss streak. So at least they didn't go into the break on a massive loss streak. Although, again, I think if they did go into the break on a massive loss streak, it would help them get out of that loss streak. But that one win, I don't think is really going into the break hot necessarily either. So hard to gauge this one. I mean, my lean would still slightly be to the Buffalo, or to the Chicago side, excuse me, which is what the market is indicating on, but I'm not going to play this. Buffalo down from -170 to -157, 85% of tickets, 52% of the cash. So it looks like the Buffalo side is somehow actually public now, with less of the money coming in on them. So indicators are on Chicago. I don't disagree with that. Toronto, Detroit. Toronto went into the break on a couple of pretty ugly losses, although losing to the Jets, I mean, I lost money on that one. it's not really an ugly loss losing to the Jets, but still, they gave up 11 goals in 2 games and lost by a combined 11-5 score. So that's not exactly great. Not exactly the greatest way to go into the break there. So I think Toronto, they could see this as like a bounce back opportunity here going to Detroit. They did actually just lose at Detroit on December 14th too. So maybe a little bit of extra motivation there for Toronto as well to beat that team that beat them not that long ago. Even though they do have a bigger game up tomorrow against Washington, I think coming out of the break, Toronto's still going to be focused on this game, in my opinion, even though Detroit doesn't have a good record. I do think for all those reasons, Toronto will show up for this, but Detroit went into the break on a really ugly note. 3 straight losses by combined 13-4 score, getting shut out in their last game. And they also have Washington up next 2 days from now. So Washington's going to play back-to-back tomorrow and the day after that, interestingly enough. So I would lean to Detroit in this one because they went into the break on the worst note. I think Toronto, I mean, that was a big game against Winnipeg, so I don't really see that as going to the break on a bad note. The only reason that I think that they may still be focused on Detroit, like I said, is because it's the first game out of the break and Detroit just beat them. Otherwise, if they'd beaten Detroit here, you might see me actually playing on Detroit here. Because then I think Toronto would more have a tendency to overlook them and look at Washington, who they have tomorrow. So still lean to Detroit, but not as strongly. Toronto down from -155 to -148. 74% of tickets, 61% of the cash. So Toronto is public, but with less of the money coming in on them. It looks like reverse line movement. Same thing going on with Buffalo. So interesting market read on those. The big game, the biggest game today, well, there are 2 big ones. So Carolina, New Jersey is definitely a big game. Carolina went to the break on a pretty lousy note, losing to the Nashville Predators 5-2. So I expect a bounce back from Carolina coming out of that. And then as far as the Devils are concerned, the Devils, it's no secret anymore that they're good. And they went into the break on 2 straight shutouts by a combined 8-0 score against the Penguins and the Rangers. We know Penguins are down this year. The Rangers, I wouldn't say they're down necessarily, but they really have been struggling for a while. So I think the Devils are the team that's not going to be able to use that break to their advantage because they went to the break on such a hot note. But it's not like they're going to overlook Carolina either. But Carolina is in more of a bounce back mode. So I lean to Carolina in this game. New Jersey up from -116 to -126. 53% of tickets, 59% of cash on Carolina. So the money looks like a higher percentage of money is on the Carolina side. But again, not something I actually want to do. I lean to my Boston Bruins as well, only because Columbus was the team that went into Boston and embarrassed them 5-1. And that was what triggered the decision to fire Montgomery as coach of the Boston Bruins. That loss was so bad. So the Bruins basically have this kind of somewhat quick road reversal revenge turnaround type of game here. So I lean to the Bruins for that reason, just because it was Columbus that beat them like that and caused them to fire their coach in Boston. I do think that for that reason, they're going to remember that was back here a while ago now, but I think the Bruins are still going to remember that. But the Bruins did go into this break on a nice note, winning 4 of 5, winning their last 2 games, beating the Capitals. Huge win to go into the break. Before that, beating Buffalo in what I thought was a bad spot for the Bruins. 7-2 combined score there. So the Bruins did go into the break on a pretty good note. So I don't quite want to come in and play the Bruins here, but because it is Columbus and because of that situation, I do think they're still going to be focused for this game. They don't have a bigger game up next. They play Columbus again up next at home in this weird home and home. So Columbus went into the break on a win as well, but they kind of went into the break on a little bit of a worse note, really, because they were losing a lot of games prior to that. So, I mean, I expect that they'll probably show up focused as well out of the break, even though they did get a win against Montreal to go into the break. But slightly into Boston, but it's not strong. Boston's down from -162 to -152. They're public, of course, because of course they will be. 74% of tickets, 91% of the cash, though. So even though it looks like the line is reverse moving against Boston, we do actually see a significant cash percentage on them. So that game's hard to read, man. I don't want to run down every one of these games, but just pointing some of that out. Nashville, maybe I will wind up doing. Nashville went into the break on 2 big wins against the Kings and the Hurricanes. So I don't know if that break is really a good thing for them when they just had a couple of huge wins, and now that break might stall out their momentum. The Blues almost went into the break on a huge loss streak, and if they did, I'd probably be playing the Blues here, but the problem is I'd be singing the Blues. The problem is they did win that final game in a big shutout against Detroit, but they are also in a return home spot here. So even though there is that extended time off, I don't like the return home spot, especially when the holidays come into it. I think it actually exacerbates the return home a little bit. I think it becomes more of a distraction because you're doing more stuff at home. So I don't love that for St. Louis, really. So I'm going to stay away. Nashville's actually up from -118 to -128. 50% of tickets, 61% of the cash on Nashville. So the odds makers are actually telling you that despite what the records might indicate, Nashville is actually the better team to the point where they're actually the favorite on the road. So, a lot of situations like that where the records indicate something, but the odds makers indicate something else, I tend to want to listen to the odds makers. So the market read would put you on Nashville in this one, but I don't want to do that, like I said, because they went into the break on a couple of big wins. So I won't do that. Minnesota, they had a pretty brutal loss streak, actually. Minnesota had started on the slide. A couple of pretty big opponents in there. They finally won a game against the Blackhawks to go into the break at least on a somewhat decent note and break that losing momentum, which I actually consider that to be a little bit more of a positive. But the Stars kind of did the same thing. And they both kind of beat a lesser opponent to break a loss streak going into the break. Dallas beat Utah. Minnesota beat Chicago. So both kind of in a similar actually situation here. So both teams are probably going to be focused. I mean, it's Dallas, Minnesota. It's a big game. So then it basically comes down to which team is the better team here, which I believe is Dallas. Dallas is up from -155 to -167. I mean, the odds makers are telling you Dallas is the better of these two teams. But is Dallas favored by too much now just because Minnesota has been playing pretty poorly recently? I don't know. 59% of the tickets on Dallas, 57% of the cash on Minnesota, though. So some conflicting market reads on that one, too. Interesting there. So I don't know which way I want to go on that one. Colorado, Utah. Colorado went into the break on a hot note, 3 wins in a row against some not very good teams, but still that break could kind of stall them out a little bit, whereas Utah went into the break on a loss streak. They lost 2 games in a row. The one was to Dallas, but still, I mean, Utah could use that break to maybe fix some things. So because Colorado went into the break hot, Utah went into the break the opposite of hot. I think that the lean to Utah would make sense in this game. And the market might look like it's in agreement with that, but the problem is Colorado did just lose at home to Utah pretty badly on December 12th. So Colorado may remember that, and that may be one reason that Colorado will actually still show up in this game, even though they do have Winnipeg up next. It's not for 4 days, so it's kind of this isolated game, so I don't want to quite do this either. Colorado may still show up just for that reason, but Colorado's down from -133 to -130. We see 60% of the tickets and money coming in on the Colorado side. They're going to be the public of these two teams, but so the market read, it looks like the line is slightly reverse moving against Colorado there. Not a game I want to get involved in, though. And then Vegas and San Jose, this is probably the biggest discrepancy as far as hot versus not hot going into the break. Hot or not hot? How good looking are these teams? Vegas went into the break on a 4-game win streak, although granted, a couple of those are not against very good teams, but San Jose went in a 5-game loss streak. So again, this looks like two teams going in opposite directions, and then you have the break. That break could disrupt Vegas's momentum, and it could help San Jose maybe fix some things. So I would lean against Vegas here, although we know Vegas is going to be a big favorite in this one, even though it is on the road. They don't really have a huge game up next against Calgary. Not that big. Vegas is up from -240 to -242, but 79% of the tickets, 72% of the cash on Vegas. So Vegas with a little bit less of the cash on them. So they're going to be public. So if you were to play this game, I think it should be San Jose, taking the puck line or something like that to come within some amount of goals. I expect them to bounce back to use that break to their advantage to try to fix some things. Whereas Vegas, they were rolling going into that break, so they have nothing to fix. No plays, though, in the NHL. NBA, I got one play here. I I will point out, I lean to the Knicks because the Knicks, even though they did play on Christmas, it was the early game on Christmas, and they almost lost as a pretty decent-sized favorite to the Spurs. So even though, yeah, it's a decent win, it's a big win just because it's Christmas. Now they're going out on the road. I do expect the Knicks to be focused a little bit because they probably know that they shouldn't have struggled as much as they did in that game. Magic are on a back-to-back. They played last night, and as I pointed out, they had a big lead against the Heat, and then they blew it. And they were coming off that big win over the Celtics, which is why I played against the Magic. But now they're on a back-to-back. So Magic, as a team that really is kind of shorthanded right now without Wagner, without the Wagners, really, and without Banchero still. I don't think either of them are back yet. We could see the Magic being kind of a tired situation here. And I think you know that those guys aren't back yet because the Knicks are laying a huge price on the road, up from 5.5 to 7, 56% of tickets, 85% of the cash coming into the Knicks. So I think the public is going to look at this and actually think that this line is too high because they're looking at two good teams with good records here. So I think the public is probably going to look to maybe try to take the points with the Magic here more so. It looks like more of the cash, though, is coming in on the Knicks side. I agree with it. I mean, the Knicks are the rested team here. They may be in a position to be more focused. So that's how I look at that. The next game up is the game I'm playing. I'm going back to the well here, and I'm going to lay the points with the Boston Celtics. I mean, you know how I do this, man. The Boston Celtics, they're in one of these spots where I expect the Celtics to bounce back, with authority here, even though they're coming off a Christmas game. I mean, they're coming off 2 straight upset losses. You remember what happened the last time they came off that upset loss to Chicago. But in that case, it was an even stronger play, I think, because it was a road revenge angle. I played Boston in the next game. My Celtics, I know my Celtics. They went into the next game against the same team on the road, and they just blasted Chicago in the next game, even though it took them a little while to get going in that game. The Celtics just destroyed them in the second half. So now the Celtics, after that, they went on the road to Orlando and they lost. Maybe they were looking ahead to Christmas. I don't know what happened there. That shorthanded Orlando team, Celtics maybe got complacent too because the Celtics had a big lead in that game. I think it was a pretty big lead, and they wound up blowing the game. So Orlando had made 2 straight huge comebacks too, which is why I faded them last night. Then the Celtics came home for Christmas and they somehow lost to Philadelphia. It was a game where Jason Tatum came back. So Tatum actually didn't play in the Orlando game. So the Celtics were without one of their best players, but the Celtics are so deep, usually it doesn't really matter. He came back, so maybe it was kind of this like lineup shuffling type of thing, and maybe they just took Philadelphia not very seriously because Philadelphia's got a bad record still. They've been in total disarray, but this is a complete Philadelphia team roster-wise now, so they had everybody there. I mean, Embiid didn't get suspended. He was more rested because he got ejected from the previous game. So he was there. Paul George was there. Maxey was there. All those guys were there. So, but even so, the Celtics are a 10-point favorite in that game. So no excuse for losing, man. The Celtics have lost 2 straight games now as double-digit favorites. I think they're going to be pissed off. And this is against Indiana, who Indiana does not play defense. They're very poor defensively. Celtics are the much better balanced team. I mean, this is the same handicap that I had last year in the playoffs. The Celtics are the way better defense of the two, and offensively, I don't even think it's clear that Indiana's better offensively than the Celtics either. Even though the Indiana's a lot better offensively than defensively, but I think the Celtics are maybe just better even on that side of the ball too, just all around. I think the Celtics are going to come out and blast Indiana, man. And this is no longer a playoff revenge scenario because guess what? Indiana got that revenge. The one time these teams played this year, Celtics went to Indiana and lost in overtime. So there's no more playoff revenge. Indiana got that revenge. So now it's in-season revenge for the Celtics, which I don't think is a strong motivator, but if the Celtics care about that, it's a little bit of extra motivation. That was the Celtics' first loss of the season. So maybe they will remember that, but I think it's just more of a motivation that you're coming off 2 bad upset losses here, man. It's double-digit favorites. Celtics are good at bouncing back with Joe Mazzulla there. This is what they do. They're going to come out and they're going to pounce on Indiana, man. I think the Celtics are going to run away with this one. Give me the Celtics, even though you're laying big points here. I think it's a fine thing to do in the NBA. I actually like doing it more on the road, like in that other spot against the Bulls. I thought that was a great spot, but I still think this spot is good. Celtics are up from 11 to 12 and a half, 62% of tickets, 84% of the cash. So the money is coming in on the side of the Celtics. In basketball, there's not a huge difference between 11, 12. I mean, you're not looking at key numbers at this point in basketball. It's basically just like, you got to blow this team out. So let's do it. Celtics minus 12 and a half is the first play. Good morning to you, sir. T-73, U.S. Marine Corps, it looks like there. Yeah, the Celtics are just asleep. What's up, Zach? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you fall asleep in a Christmas Day nationally televised game, but yeah, I mean, I do think the Celtics tried to sleepwalk their way through that and thought it would be an easy win. And of course, it was not. The Celtics, they were losing badly in that game against the 76ers, and the Celtics came back and took the lead. So it looked like they were going to get out of there with the win. It looked like, okay, the Celtics got punched in the mouth. Now they realize they got to play, but they still wound up blowing it. So, yeah, give me the Celtics in that one. Brooklyn, I would lean against Brooklyn. I mean, they just pulled off a big win over the Milwaukee Bucks, and now they're returning home from that. So Brooklyn, they're not a very good team. So pulling off an upset like that is pretty significant. But the problem with that is that the Spurs are coming off playing the Knicks really close on Christmas Day. The Spurs do have the better travel spot because they are just staying in New York City, basically. But I don't think it's enough to come in and play the Spurs, especially after playing tough on Christmas. But Brooklyn is also in a back-to-back. They just played at Milwaukee last night, and now they're returning home. They do have Orlando up next, too. So Brooklyn is definitely in a bad spot here. So the lean is to the Spurs, but you do have to lay a huge road price with the Spurs, up from 4.5 to 7. Odds makers are aware that the Spurs are actually not that bad a team now. Problem is, do I want to lay a price like that with a Spurs team that's still not totally proven themselves coming off that Christmas Day game where they played tough? Not really, but the spot is really bad for the Nets. So lean is still to the Spurs here. 58% of tickets, 80% of the cash on the Spurs. I mean, I agree with that side. Like I said, Minnesota, they're coming off that huge win on Christmas. That was the game that I was on. I won on Minnesota. That was playoff revenge. They beat the Dallas Mavs, who eliminated them from the playoffs last year. They're staying in Texas, but that's going to be a tough win to come off of, man. They could be in a letdown spot, even though Houston has played pretty well. Houston might be playing with a little bit of an extra chip on their shoulder because, well, hey, man, wait a minute, man. We didn't get to play on Christmas Day, so what's up with that? But the problem with this is that Houston's returning home from a road trip, although really it was kind of a split road trip because they went up to Toronto, Charlotte. Then I think they came home for Christmas break, and then all they did is go over to New Orleans, which is not a big travel spot. They won against a really injury-depleted New Orleans team, but Houston is in a back-to-back here with travel still, so I don't love the spot for Houston, really, so I'm going to stay off of this one, too. Houston has flipped to the favorite, though, so the market does still look like it is on the Rockets side. And like I said, I do agree with it. I think the T-Wolves are in more of a tough spot here, coming off that big Christmas Day win over the Dallas Mavs. So I do still lean to the Rockets, but on playing on a back-to-back, I don't love it, even though they really didn't have to put in that much of an effort to beat the Pelicans yesterday, but still, it is a back-to-back, so I tend to just stay away from that. Rockets have flipped from a 1.5-point dog to a 1-point favorite. 69% of tickets, 87% of the cash. So the money is coming in on Houston, it looks like, in this one. In agreement with me. The other issue I have with this is that Houston has the way better record than Minnesota, so it just looks too easy to lay like 1 point with Minnesota, right? Where it's basically just like pick the winner. So the public is coming in on Houston too, although the public is not always wrong. And like I said, I think the public might have this one correct, but I think they have it correct for the wrong reasons. I think the reason why they're correct is that Minnesota's in a terrible spot, not that Houston has the better record, because the odds makers are telling you that Minnesota is actually the better team because Houston's not even getting full home court here. But, yeah, so I don't quite want to do it, but I do still lean to Houston overall in that one. I'm going through every one of these games, man, for NHL and NBA, whatever. Cleveland is at Denver. I mean, this is kind of an interesting one. Cleveland actually did not play on Christmas, I don't think. So they've had a big break. So even though I think Cleveland might be a little bit angry that they didn't play on Christmas, thinking, hey, we're one of the best teams, we should have. But I also think that having a long break here coming into that break on a long win streak, I don't think is really that good. And that win streak wasn't that impressive. I keep saying Cleveland has really had a pretty easy schedule early on this season. I mean, look at this win streak. Washington, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I mean, that's a pretty good win, but Philadelphia, who really is just, even though they have their guys back, very inconsistent. And then Utah, I mean, I'm not really impressed by that win streak. Then they went into the prolonged break on a win streak. And like I said, that can be a momentum disruptor, even though I know you're going to be focused when you're playing Jokic and you're starting a road trip, but still, I think that they might take a little while to get back into rhythm, man, after having the holiday break, going into that break with nothing to fix because you were rolling. So I do think that could be a momentum stopper for Cleveland. Denver, I mean, they played on Christmas and they lost. And I said I didn't love the spot for them on Christmas because they just blown out that same Phoenix team. So then they went on the road to play Phoenix and they did lose on Christmas. So I think Denver's kind of in a bounce back spot after that. And they don't have a bigger game up next, even though they play tomorrow. I mean, out of this back-to-back scenario, you know the game they're going to be focused on is the Cleveland one. So I like Denver a little bit more. And they played on Christmas, so at least they don't have that like extended time off. So they're used to playing and they're going to be in bounce back mode. So I actually kind of like the Nuggets in this one, even though we've seen the Cavs go from a 1.5 point dog to a 2.5 point favorite. Looks like it's headed towards 3. 54% of tickets and cash on the Cavs. Again, I'm not quite sure I agree with that, with where the line is moving on that one. But obviously, I'm not going to play this game. Dallas coming off that Christmas Day loss to the T-Wolves. Either way you look at it, I think that was a big game for both teams. But Dallas is now going on the road to face Phoenix. They don't have anything big up next. So I think starting a road trip, coming off a loss like that, I actually expect focus out of Dallas in this one. Meanwhile, Phoenix, they're coming off that big win over the Nuggets in revenge on Christmas. So Phoenix, I think they're in more of a letdown spot here. They do have Golden State up tomorrow. But, I mean, I don't know how much of a letdown you can really have when you're facing Dallas, one of the best teams in the conference, the team that won the conference last year. So I don't really expect them to overlook Dallas. So I'm going to stay away from this one too, even though I do lean to Dallas. I think Dallas is in a bit of the better spot in this one. Suns are down from 2.5 to 1.5, 60% of tickets on them, 76% of the cash coming in over on the Dallas side. So the market does agree with me on Dallas as well. And then Golden State against the Clippers. Golden State lost to LeBron's Lakers in a close game on Christmas. I think it might help them actually to now get out of there and go on the road and face the Clippers. So I actually think Golden State is kind of in the better spot here. But there is an injury situation that we have to be aware of. Clippers just beat the Memphis Grizzlies. They didn't play on Christmas, but they are returning home from a road trip. So I don't know, man. That return home from a road trip with the holidays kind of combined in there, I think it could be a little bit of a distraction. But it is the Golden State Warriors coming into your house. So you're still going to be focused on Golden State. So the problem is, though, are they going to be totally focused on Golden State when Curry is not going to play in this game? So I can see a lot of kind of conflicting things going on here. It looks like Curry is not going to play in this game. He will play tomorrow. Draymond Green is a game-time decision. I mean, it seems like he always is. He's a game-time decision with oldness. He'll probably play, but I don't even know if that really matters. Clippers have flipped from a 1-point dog to a 4.5 point favorite. That's because of the Curry outage here. That's because Curry's going to be out. That's why the line is moved. It's not actual line movement, but 60% of tickets, 82% of the cash also coming in on the Clippers. So it looks like some actual money is also coming in on the Clippers. I'm not sure I agree with that. And I think the public is going to come in a little bit on the Clippers because they have a slightly better record. They've been a bit better at home. Golden State's been a bit less good on the road. Golden State without Curry now, but it could be like an injured player type of situation. Golden State, like I said, leaving home and going out on the road, I don't think is a negative spot for them. So I do expect focus from Golden State in that one. That one's a tough read. So it's not going to be a play for me. Don't sleep on Houston. Yeah, I mean, they have Ime Udoka, right? The former Celtics coach. I like that guy, and he's the coach there now. I didn't like the fact that they had fired him because he's a really good defensive coach, and they fired him for like sleeping with an assistant or something. I'm like, whatever. So I didn't like that move to begin with the Celtics, but now I'm a fan of Missoula, man. What can you say? Joey Maz is hilarious, dude. He has such awesome press conference sound bites. Like during the playoffs last year, I think it was when they won the championship, they asked him if he was going to see the royal family, and he was like, "You mean Jesus, Mary, and Joseph?" That's the only royal family I'm aware of. It's so awesome, man. Like, no, sir, we mean the British royal family. He's like, I don't pay attention to those things. Oh, man, that was an awesome one. And the one that he just had was so hilarious from the game that I was at where they lost to Chicago, and they had those bad calls from the refs and the technical fouls. And Joe Mazzulla was yelling at the refs and having to be held back by his like assistant coaches or whatever. And somebody on Twitter took that footage of him like yelling like, fuck you, getting restrained by his guys, yelling at the refs, being held back. And then somebody like juxtaposed that video with his post-game press conference where they asked him about it, like, sir, you were getting really fired up there. What were you saying to the refs there? And he was like, I was just wishing them a Merry Christmas. I didn't think I would see them again before the holiday. So, that's what you do. You wish them a Merry Christmas. This is so awesome, dude. He's so hilarious. And he doesn't even laugh. He just says it with a straight face. It's like Top Lobster. I lie to the people. Man, I love that. All right. So that's going to do it for the NBA rundown here. And all we got left is these college football bowl games. And man, I do have a play in the last one. We got 5 bowl games today. We're in the stretch where you get a lot of bowl games in, and we have a shit ton of them tomorrow. I think we have like 8 bowl games here tomorrow. So do I really want to have to break all these down? No, I don't really. But first game up today is at noon, so it's in about an hour now. I got to make sure my bowl picks are ready. By the way, Bowling Green, I don't know what the hell that was. They outgained Arkansas State by like 200 yards in that game. They got almost 400 yards passing from their quarterback, Basilek, and they still didn't win the game. I don't understand. And there was no turnover differential. Both teams had 1 turnover, so I don't understand how Bowling Green lost that game, man. And they were losing the whole thing, but they dominated the game statistically, like significantly. I don't understand it. So good thing I didn't play it, but I liked Bowling Green. Obviously, I lost some bowl picks on that one. I was rolling with my bowl picks, man, up until yesterday. I only had 2 losses. I had 1 loss against the spread, picking bowls up until, even though they give you some like stale lines, up until these games. And now I've lost 3 out of these 4. It's just insane. Where San Jose State also dominated the Hawaii Bowl statistically, and they didn't win in 5 overtimes. But hey, these games have been entertaining to say the least. Pittsburgh lost in 6 overtimes, which, by the way, I was surprised. Holstein did not come back for Pittsburgh. So we knew that Yarnell was not going to play, their backup quarterback who played the last few games for Pittsburgh this year, because he entered the transfer portal. So we knew he wasn't going to be there, but Holstein was not in the transfer portal. So I thought he was going to be back because he was out with an injury. So I thought he was going to return in this game, and he didn't. So Pittsburgh had, I forget, was it Gleason or is Gleason the Toledo? He's the Toledo quarterback. I forget who Pittsburgh had in the game. Pittsburgh had their 3rd string quarterback playing in that game, which I didn't expect, but they still obviously had many chances to win that game, and they didn't do it. And then Kansas State had to make a big comeback in their game. They were down 17 late in that game. They came all the way back and won. Kansas State, they still actually had a really good rushing attack, even though they were down Giddens or whatever, their running back. So pretty interesting games yesterday, man. Crazy games. Boomer Sooner. Yeah, so we do have the Sooners up in the noon game here in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. One of those bowls where you get the military industrial complex sponsoring it. We love that. We love that. Gonna have military flyovers. We got a military academy in the bowl, so they're in an appropriate bowl. It seems like this bowl, not always, but a lot of times they try to get one of the military academies in this bowl. Doesn't always happen. This is against Oklahoma, so I talked about this a ways back, but this is why you got to wait, man. At this point, the way the bowls go with the transfer portals and stuff, you can't really bet these games early anymore, man. You got to see like what the personnel is going to be out there, and this is the problem I have with this game. Oklahoma was an 8.5-point favorite, and now they're all the way down to a 1-point favorite. So you know what that means. You know that means that Oklahoma, the floodgates have opened, and they have a lot of guys leaving. 60% of tickets, 67% of the cash on Navy. I don't want to play Navy either in this game, though. So that's the issue I have with this. At first, I wanted to play Oklahoma in this game because if Oklahoma had their full, their full slate of players here, and they were like a big favorite, this was going to be one of those games where the public was going to be like, Oklahoma, they're 6-6, and everybody's been bashing Oklahoma as far as Alabama's worst loss. Oh, Alabama lost to this awful Oklahoma team. Ha ha, it's a joke. Yeah. So Oklahoma's really been getting shit on. So I liked all of that. And the public was going to look at this and say, and Navy just beat Army too. And Navy looked really good against Army. Navy has the better looking record. So I thought the public was going to come in all over Navy in this game, to getting that amount of points. And they still are to some degree on the Navy side. So I thought it was one of those games where it's just, you're going to have the better team who is the favorite. They're an anti-public favorite. They're obviously the better team. They're in the way better conference. They face a way more difficult schedule, and they have the better defense. That would be Oklahoma. But now the problem is, you look at what's going on with these bowl opt-outs here, man. Oklahoma, look at all these opt-outs from Oklahoma now. Everybody's hitting the transfer portal, including Jackson Arnold, who I believe is their starting quarterback this year. So I can't do it, man. I can't play Oklahoma. We don't know what we're going to get from this Oklahoma team, who they're even going to have playing quarterback here. I guess Hawkins Jr., who played a couple of games, is probably going to be, as long as he's not in the transfer portal as well, I think it's probably going to be him. I don't want to have anything to do with this, man. I just can't do it. But my initial read was going to be, well, Navy, they treat that Army-Navy game like it's their bowl game, man. And Navy pulled off the upset, and they won it, and they won the Commander-in-Chief trophy. That's a big win. So I'm thinking, is Navy really going to care about a bowl game like this? But then I'm looking, and I actually think the answer to this is yes. I actually think Navy is going to care about this because it's the Armed Forces Bowl. They do still get to play an SEC team here. And when's the last time they won a bowl? I think I looked back, and the last time they won a bowl may have been this Armed Forces Bowl way back in 2013. Is that right? Oh, no, they won in 2014. I forget, man, because I look at all these teams' bowl histories, and I forget. No, this is the last game they won, 2019 against Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl, AutoZone Liberty Bowl. That was the last bowl game that they won, and they actually haven't been in a bowl recently either. So I actually think Navy might actually be excited to be in this game. And the thing about Navy is they don't have guys hitting the transfer portal because it's basically, essentially, it's not allowed for the most part with the military academies. So they basically have their entire team playing in this game. So I can't play it, man. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just a very hard read here. I mean, Oklahoma is so depleted that, I'm not going to play Oklahoma. If they had their full slate of players, I would probably be jumping in on Oklahoma there, but I can't do it. I don't even know how to read this game. If you want to go with the market, it does look like Navy is the right side. But of course, I mean, you've lost a lot of value on the number, but the number is, of course, it's changed now because of the personnel. I mean, so it's basically an entirely new game where the line had to be completely refreshed. So yeah, I'm not going to bet on this game either, man. These bowl games, very hard to bet on. The Chinese jet will be in a dogfight with the B-2. Yeah, we're going to have some drone fights over it. This game is in Fort Worth, Texas, by the way. So the location advantage actually is on Oklahoma's side there because, Oklahoma has a big fan base and they're probably going to still travel to that game, but maybe because they know a bunch of their players are going to be out for that game, maybe it's a little bit less enticing to that Oklahoma team. Oklahoma is still one of those teams that's sitting at 6-6 though. So, I always say that that's a little bit bigger of a motivator in a bowl because you don't want to have a losing season. It's just, will their personnel be able to show up and play in this game? And maybe, because the odds makers are still telling you that these teams are like evenly matched when it's Oklahoma with like none of their players playing against Navy's full team. The teams are still like evenly matched, sort of. Very difficult to figure out. The Birmingham Bowl is the next game up between Georgia Tech and Vandy. Both of these teams not too far away from where this game's being played. A nice southern matchup here. Georgia Tech is a 3-point favorite in this one, up a little bit. It looks like the money is coming in on the Georgia Tech side, but I'm not sure I agree with it. 52% of tickets are on Vandy, 57% of the cash on Georgia Tech. We know Vandy was hyped throughout the season, but I think that hype may be a little bit off of them now, even though, like I said, the market read does look like it's on the Georgia Tech side. But I do think Georgia Tech is indeed the better team. It looks like for this game, we don't have any really significant opt-outs in this game, I don't think. Not a lot of opt-outs in general. I mean, the backup quarterback for Georgia Tech, Piron, who wasn't even good this year when he had to play when King was hurt. He didn't do well, so I don't even think that's really going to matter that much. Essentially, the starters, like the starting quarterbacks, will be there. For the most part, these guys are going to be there in this game, so there's not a whole lot to see there. Georgia Tech, the issue I have with Georgia Tech is that I think that this game against Georgia was almost effectively their bowl game, man. I mean, that was a huge game against Georgia, even though I know they've had a lot of time off since then, but they took them into 8 overtimes. They almost could have won that game, and that would have been a crazy win for Georgia Tech. That again, I think they may have treated that like their bowl game. And now, are they going to really be that excited about playing Vandy? I mean, these two teams are both in bowls a lot. Georgia Tech won the Gasparilla Bowl last year. So it's like, I mean, I don't really know. I don't see that much of a reason for Georgia Tech to be that excited about this game, to be honest, even though King, I mean, he is a good quarterback. He's probably like the best offensive player on the field from either team would be King. But Vandy, I think, may have a little bit of the better of the two defenses in this game, and they're getting points. And Vandy, the thing I don't like about Vandy is they didn't finish the season well. I don't like teams that go into the bowl on a bad loss streak like this. Like I said with Pitt yesterday, Pitt was the extreme example of that. I leaned Toledo on that one, and I should have played Toledo, even though it wasn't Holstein playing for Pitt. But Pitt started the season on a huge win streak, and then they lost their last 5 games of the season. You don't want to go into the bowl like that because that means you kind of just didn't care anymore down the stretch. Vandy lost their last 3 games, but I don't know if I would say they didn't care, though. I mean, South Carolina, LSU on the road, and then Tennessee, I think those are just difficult games. So I don't know that Vandy really just didn't care anymore. More so, I think they just faced tough teams. They faced a really difficult schedule this year. So Vandy, they faced a more difficult schedule than Georgia Tech this year because Vandy was in the SEC. So we know that. So Vandy is a little bit more battle tested here. I don't think their quarterback is better, Pavia, but and they don't have a whole lot of a rushing attack. Pavia gets like their biggest rushing stat in a lot of these games, which isn't great. So both of these quarterbacks are kind of dual threat, but King is the way better quarterback. But I do think you're getting the better defense with Vandy. And then the other thing about Vandy, I always say, 6-6. Vandy is sitting at 6-6, and you know that's that a little bit of extra motivator. Again, like I just said when I talked about Oklahoma, when you're at 6-6, you don't want to lose the ball because you don't want to be known as the losing edition of the 2024 program here, the 2024 Vandy Commodores losing team. All you got to do is win this game, and then you're known as the winning team. So to me, I would slightly lean to Vandy in this one and disagree with the market in that one. But again, I'm not going to do it. Liberty before authority. What's up, man? Yes, it is fake and gay. That is true. The next game up is AutoZone Liberty Bowl, the bowl I just talked about, last year's edition of or whatever. Or no, I talked about the 2019 edition of it. This is Texas Tech and Arkansas. This game is in Memphis, so it is a little bit closer to Arkansas. So Arkansas has a little bit of a location edge, not much. This line has been all over the place. It started out, it looks like it started out Texas Tech was a 2.5-point underdog, but I didn't really see that. I saw Texas Tech as a favorite for a little while, and then I saw the line go all the way to Arkansas -2, and now it's gone all the way back to the other side to Texas Tech -2.5, bordering on 3. So this line is horseshoed completely around back to Texas Tech. Kind of crazy. 69% of tickets, 68% of cash. So Texas Tech, they've been the team that the public wants the whole time because they have the way better record or the better looking record than Arkansas here. So I was looking to maybe potentially play Arkansas in this game because of the way it was looking. It was looking like, all right, Texas Tech is public. The market is moving towards Arkansas a little bit, but now it's completely gone back around here. So I don't know what to think about this game, man. This game, we do have some opt-outs, but we're not losing like starting quarterbacks or anything like this, but Texas Tech has lost like a couple of guys from their offense here. So we'll see what happens with this. But for the most part, I think these teams are semi-intact, even though it does look like there are a lot of guys hitting the transfer portal. I think not all of these guys are starters. Both coaches are still there, I believe, for these two teams. So we're going to see what happens here. I believe both coaches are still here. You could correct me if I'm wrong about that. So again, this is going to be a tough read, man. You got Texas Tech. They have the much prettier record sitting at 8-4. But here's the thing about Arkansas, man. I still kind of lean to Arkansas here because they're another one of those teams sitting at 6-6 against a team with a better record. So again, a little bit of an extra motivator. You want to try to win that game if you're sitting at 6-6 to become the winning team rather than the losing team. Arkansas, they've faced a more difficult schedule too. I mean, they're in the SEC. Like, what more do you want? Even though, yeah, I know they got hammered in some of these games against better teams. They also played pretty competitively against some of these better teams as well. This Oklahoma State game, that was an outlier. I mean, that game, Arkansas completely dominated that game statistically. I don't know how they lost that game. So what can you say about that? Arkansas, yeah, I mean, they're kind of staggering into the playoffs. And I mean, you didn't expect them to beat Ole Miss or Texas. And they did lose their final game on the road against Mizzou. I mean, Mizzou is a bowl team. They're not terrible. So what can you say about that? But Arkansas, they face a more difficult schedule because Texas Tech is in the Big 12. So you're getting an Arkansas team that plays more physically. They face more physical teams. They have the better defense. They played a more difficult schedule against Texas Tech, who's a much more of a finesse team. They played an easier schedule playing in the Big 12. They really didn't face a lot of good teams up until they faced Iowa State and then I guess Colorado. Pretty good, but really they were not tested that much. So Arkansas has been the way more tested team here. And Texas Tech, their defense is awful. I mean, the public likes to come in on teams that can score. And yeah, we know Texas Tech can score. Their offense is crazy. I don't know how many of those guys are actually not playing in this game, but Arkansas is now getting points as the better defense. I actually slightly lean to Arkansas in this game. I'm not going to play it, but that's the way that I look at this this one here, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. The next game up is the craziest line move. We're getting into these night games here, which is number 21, Syracuse against Washington State in the DirecTV Holiday Bowl, which I think this game has gone through a lot of different sponsors. I don't know and this game might be different than the Poinsettia Bowl, which is always the San Diego County Credit Union Poinsettia Bowl. I don't know if that game still exists or if that game turned into the Holiday Bowl. I don't know, because this game, whatever, is in San Diego, California. So, yeah, I know it's on the Pacific Coast, and you get a Pacific Coast Washington State team here. That's about the only good thing you could say about Washington State here, because Washington State, look at this, man, and this doesn't even do this justice, man. Washington State, their coach jumped ship, and then the floodgates open, and basically Washington State, their entire team almost is transferring out. So they're not playing in this game. I don't even know how Washington State can even still field a team. This looks like a Marshall situation where Marshall actually had to back out of the bowl because they had so many transfers out. I think Washington State is up to like 26 or so transfers here, guys that are not playing in this game. That's crazy. And Syracuse does not have a whole lot. Syracuse, most of their starters are going to be there. Their coach is still there. I think their coach has only been there for 1 year. I think it was the coach who coached their bowl last year, which is why I liked Syracuse in that bowl. I think it was him last year, and he was going to become their coach, which is why I liked it. So he became the coach this year, coached them to a pretty good season, and I think they like playing for this guy. McCord, Syracuse's quarterback, is going to be there as long as he's not throwing a whole bunch of picks. He's been a pretty good quarterback this year. So Syracuse is mostly intact, but again, I don't think you're getting any value on Syracuse here as the line. Once Washington State, once those guys started all jumping ship, look what this line did. It went from Syracuse -7 to -17.5 with juice. 65% of tickets, 83% of the cash on Syracuse. So the public likes Syracuse. The money's coming in at Syracuse. I would still not want anything to do with the Washington State side in this game, man. There's no way I would want to try to do anything with that. The total has actually gone down from 62 to 59.5 because of all those opt-outs as well. I don't know if it's actually even dropped enough, really, even though I know I said that yesterday about that K-State Rutgers game, and I was really wrong about that being low scoring. So, I mean, these backups can play, and Syracuse isn't really that good defensively, but Washington State, they don't even have enough players to field a team almost. So how is Washington State really going to score that much in this game? I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. Syracuse should easily win this game, in my opinion. I mean, their team is going to show up for this game. Syracuse, at the very least, because they play in the ACC, I think they've actually gone out to the Pacific Coast at least a couple of times this year. They went out to UNLV. They went out to California not that long ago. And Syracuse, they finished the season pretty strong. I know they had the huge win over Miami that kind of it like crushed Miami's dreams, basically. It kept them out of the playoff. So I know Syracuse is coming off a big win, but again, Syracuse, yeah, I mean, I think they do want to play here. I mean, they finished the season hot. They were continuing to play at a good level. I mean, they wanted to play. Washington State, they lost their last 3 games, and they lost all 3 of them as a double-digit favorite against New Mexico, Oregon State, and Wyoming. That is not how you want to see a team finish the season. And we know what's going on here. All these guys have just jumped ship now. After they were a 1-loss team, they lost 3 games as double-digit favorites to finish the season. That's not finishing the season strong at all. So there's really nothing to like about Washington State here, man. And they face a much, much easier schedule than even Syracuse did this year, because Washington State, I mean, they're in the orphan to Pac-12, basically, with just them and Oregon State, and they really did not face, like, the best team they faced was Boise State. And then they got to face, Washington, Texas Tech. Those are their only like significant opponents they faced all year, really. So Syracuse, even though I know I bashed the ACC for being kind of weak, but at least Syracuse did play Pitt, UNLV, NC State, who's in a bowl, BC is in a bowl. I mean, they've in Miami, of course, big win. UConn even is in a bowl. So, and Cal wasn't even that bad. Cal was in a bowl as well. So Syracuse faced many more bowl teams at the very least than Washington State did. There's nothing to like about Washington State in this game, but am I going to lay 17.5 in this game? No, I'm not going to do it. Zach, what's up, man? The hot sauce reviews, because I don't have, this is a way that I make money on the side. Like there's no way I'm going to make as much money doing hot sauce reviews. Like I would have to build up the channel. It would take forever. Yeah. I mean, you're going to pay for the Patreon. There's no way I'm going to be bigger than Hot Ones. You guys are very much overstating this. I don't have time to do it. Like, this is my second job. Almost all of my time goes to my actual job that actually pays me 6 figures, and that's about it. I really don't have much time at all. Like, I don't know when I would do these hot sauce reviews. I have no time. And then last up, we got the last game of the day, the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. I don't even know who SRS Distribution is. I don't even want to know. Are they affiliated with the military industrial complex too? I don't know. This is a Pacific Coast start time game. This is a 10:30 p.m. Eastern game out in Las Vegas. USC against Texas A&M. I got to play in this game. It is USC +4. That is where I'm going in this one. Texas A&M, they're up from 2.5 to 3. It was 3.5, 4. I think you can easily get still 3.5 out there. There's not a whole lot of difference between 3.5 and 4. They are public, 72% of tickets. Looks like 73% of the cash on them for the time being, but I think we might see this flip around a little bit. I think we're looking at USC being an almost semi-home anti-public underdog in this case, because this game is at Las Vegas. So USC has a location advantage here because they play in the Pacific time zone. They played in Las Vegas. They played in this exact stadium to start the season against LSU, and they won the game. So they've played in this exact stadium before. So they have the familiarity with that. They're a Pacific time zone team, and they've already been out in the Pacific time zone for weeks now, though I know that's not going to matter that much, and you have a lot of time to prepare for this bowl game. But another one of the main things I don't like about Texas A&M, though, is that Texas A&M, their season came down to the very end here. They basically were facing Texas to try to get into the SEC championship game, and they lost that game to Texas. So Texas A&M, even though there wasn't a huge chance they were going to be able to do it, but they could have beaten Texas and gotten into the SEC championship game, and then they would have been playing to maybe try to get into the college football playoff. And they were thinking their playoff hopes were still alive basically until this Auburn game. So the way they finished this season, I think this is a disappointed Texas A&M team, man. I don't think they're going to be that hyped about playing in the Las Vegas Bowl, even though it is against USC, a Big Ten team. I don't see it, man. I think Texas A&M, up until like the last couple of weeks, they had higher aspirations than this. So I don't love it. I mean, I will say most of these guys are going to play in this game, even though we do see a lot of opt-outs on the USC side. So does that worry me a little bit? I don't know, because a lot of these guys are not like very like key pieces to this team. And I know we see Miller Moss is on there, but the thing about Miller Moss is he got benched. He wasn't cutting it for USC. They actually benched him. So I know he has bowl experience. He played in their bowl last year, and I think they won against Louisville, but he just wasn't cutting it. So he's going to be out. So the guy that replaced him is going to be in. But you want to talk about bowl experience. Wait a minute. Who's the guy who replaced him on USC? Wait a minute. Yeah, who is that guy? Oh, yeah, it's Maeva, however you pronounce his name. Who is this guy? And he did pretty well in his last 3 games too, by the way. Even against Notre Dame, they put up a really nice offensive performance against Notre Dame. Maeva, he was UNLV's quarterback last year, and he played in UNLV's bowl, which was, I think it was that bowl that's in Arizona, the one that I talked about yesterday. So he has bowl experience too. So both of these quarterbacks, Reed for Texas A&M played in Texas A&M's bowl last year, which I think they won. So I think both of these teams won their bowl last year. So really there's not much of a motivation as far as like our team hasn't won a bowl in a long time. No. I mean, these teams are used to always being in bowls, whatever. That doesn't really matter. But both of these quarterbacks have bowl experience. They both played in a bowl last year, but Maeva might have a little bit of an extra chip on his shoulder because he was involved in a bowl loss last year, actually. I think with UNLV, they lost to Kansas, whereas Reed, I'm pretty sure they won their bowl game last year. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Oh, no, they lost. My mistake. They lost to Oklahoma State. So both of these quarterbacks actually lost their bowl game last year, but still, I don't think that really matters that much coming into this. And you're also looking at a USC team that's 6-6. So again, that's extra motivation. You get extra motivation for this team. They don't want to have a losing season. They're playing in a familiar venue. And Maeva, because he was on UNLV, he's in his home city, basically. He spent all this time in Las Vegas, and he's playing in Las Vegas here, so he's not going to get distracted. Whereas a team like Texas A&M, this is the problem with these Las Vegas Bowls, man. If you have a team where they're not used to playing in Las Vegas and they're kind of disappointed, they don't really want to be here, they can easily get distracted by all the party life, the nightlife that's going on in Vegas. So that could be an added distraction. Whereas for USC, they're used to playing in Las Vegas, man. I mean, they played in Las Vegas to start the season. The conference championships in a lot of these Pacific Coast conferences wind up being in Las Vegas or some similar venue to that. Maeva, the quarterback, he's used to being in Las Vegas. He's not going to be distracted. So there's a lot of locational advantage, in my opinion, on the USC side in this one. And again, they're 6-6. So they don't want to have a losing season. So I think they're going to show up for this game, man. You're looking at a USC team. Yeah, they didn't face the most difficult schedule, really, but their losses, for the most part, weren't really that bad. I mean, they lost to Michigan at the Big House in a close game. I mean, whatever. They beat LSU to start the season pretty good. They lost in overtime to Penn State, where I think they could have won that game. I think they were beating Penn State for a lot of it at home. Those games were all with Moss, by the way. And yeah, after that, they lost to Maryland. I played Maryland in that game. It was a bad spot having to fly cross country. I don't think you can really dock USC for losing a game like that. They did lose at Washington. We know Washington was a bit down this year. And then they lost to Notre Dame. I mean, you're not going to blame them for losing to Notre Dame. And they had a nice offensive performance against a Notre Dame team that, their defense is pretty highly touted, but USC put up a lot of points against that defense. So this USC team, and that was with Maeva at quarterback. So this USC team, I mean, they can play, and I think they have more of a reason to show up in this game than Texas A&M does. There aren't a whole lot of pieces missing on either side here. So yeah, all that being said, give me the points with USC in this game, man. It's one of those games that I kind of like to play where you got a team that's disappointed coming into it. And with USC, they want to win this game because they want to be a winning team rather than a losing team, and they're not even a favorite. So you're playing a team that's probably going to give you a full effort as an underdog. That's what you want to look for, man. So give me that, even though I know Texas A&M does have the better defense out of the two. I know they played in a tough conference. They played a tough schedule. USC, I mean, played in the second toughest conference. Their schedule wasn't that difficult, but it wasn't easy either. Flying cross country a couple of times isn't that easy either. And yeah, that loss to Minnesota wasn't that great either. I think I played Minnesota in that one. I might have. I forget. Maybe I didn't, but whatever the case is, yeah, and it was tough to go to an unfamiliar venue for USC. So this is not going to be an unfamiliar venue. They know all about this venue. So it would only make sense, right, if they have their season bookended by wins at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, right? They opened the season with a win there against LSU. Why not finish the season with a win there as well against Texas A&M? So those are the two plays. That's going to do it for me, man. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. Plays today after that huge rundown. Boston Celtics -12.5 and USC +4 are the only plays today. Keeping it simple, stupid, keeping it selective, stupid. Still KISS is the acronym there. Charles, thanks for hanging out, man. That's going to do it for me. Tower Gang Toad, you can find me on Twitter, of course. I just ratioed Tim Pool on Christmas, so that was awesome. Tower Gang Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You can throw some support for the most offensive podcast out there, and you get live pre-show, post-show, hang out with us in a Telegram, submit to the mailbag. What better day to do it than today, because we're doing a show tonight at 9:11 p.m. Eastern. So we will have a Tower Gang episode tonight. So you can subscribe to the Patreon and see the pre-show and post-show for tonight's episode as well. Let's do it, man. Tower Gang, baby. And I'll be back. I think I'm going to be back tonight with my NFL week 17 show too, because there are 3 Saturday games. So I think I got to just put them all in one show. So probably after Tower Gang, I'm going to be doing it at least tomorrow's Saturday, and I can sleep in. Well, maybe a little bit. I can't sleep in that much because I have to get up and handicap the stupid like Wasabi Fenway Bowl or whatever that's at 11 a.m. Isn't that just great? UConn and UNC, man. I don't know, man. You just have to install Telegram on your phone, and then I think the link to the Telegram is in the Patreon. So you have to bring up Patreon on your phone and click the link on your phone, and that should launch Telegram, and then you should be able to get in that way. I'm pretty sure that's going to do it once again for me. We'll be back with Tower Gang tonight, and I'll probably be back with my NFL show very late night, total degenerate hours. It'll probably be around midnight though, because we end Tower Gang around 11:30. So probably will do that. I think I know what my NFL plays are going to be for the most part. So that's going to do it. Thanks for hanging out, guys, and peace out. Enjoy the games today.